Alright guys, so I'm getting ready to unbolt the intake manifold. Basically you have 10 8mm bolts, which you need to undo, 5 on each side. Now, when you're installing the manifold, there is a proper torque sequence and pattern that you need to follow. But on the other hand, when you're removing the intake manifold, there is also a pattern in which you want to follow so that you don't distort the intake manifold in any kind of way. So I know this is a real ghetto, but this was just the best I could do. I just thought of it the last second. I'd like to show you guys that pattern, and since I don't have anybody here to hold the camera for me, I'm not going to be able to unbolt this and show you the pattern. So this is what I came up with. Pretty ingenious. So this is the pattern that you're going to follow when you're removing the intake manifold on an LS3. Basically, it's in reverse of when you're installing the manifold and torquing the bolts down. So when you're removing the intake manifold, you're going to start over here, and I'm on the passenger side. So you're first going to loosen this bolt, 1, then you go 2, then you go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you're starting from the outside and working your way inward when you're removing the intake manifold. Now when you're installing it, you're going to start here and you're going to work your way outwards. And that is basically how to properly remove the LS3 intake manifold without distorting it in any kind of way. Alright guys, let me get started, and hopefully the next video the manifold will be off. Now there are some, on my vehicle, my Corvette Grand Sport, you have some lines that run into the back of the intake manifold. You're going to have to contend with them, but it's best you first try to get it out and push it forward a couple of inches so you can access those lines in the back of the manifold. Alright guys, I'll be back. Alright guys, so I modified my drawing in case there's any confusion. This is the passenger side. I'm starting on the passenger side. That's the driver's side. This is the front, and this is the back of the motor. Front of motor, back of motor, passenger side, driver's side. So you're starting on the passenger side, on the very first bolt to the far right, towards the front of the motor. So that's number 1. So you start on the passenger side, the first bolt towards the front of the motor. Alright guys, I'll be back. Okay, I took the bolts out, and before I do that, before I pull the intake manifold off, you just have to disconnect these vent lines, these PVC lines. You have one here towards the front on the passenger side, and one in the back, right back there, in the back on the driver's side. So all you have to do is, see this part right here? It's got a little hook. It's holding this tang in place. You're going to push this tang out and up. You got to get over that little hook, and then you just pull this outward. Let me see if I can do this with one hand. Okay. And voila, that's simple. Alright guys, I'll be back. My apologies, I forgot. You have to undo that one line right there too before you can pull the intake manifold off. Alright, so let me get to that. I'll be back. Okay, to disconnect this one line from the driver's side of the intake manifold, just take a screwdriver and push down on the center of this clip. Push it down, and then you can pull it out gently. Alright, so the manifold's already loose. It's ready to just come out and be pulled forward, and then you have to contend with the lines that go to the back of the manifold. Alright, I'll be back. Alright guys, I got the intake manifold off. There it is. Don't think for 1 minute that you're just gonna, I learned the hard way, ran into some snags. Don't think you're just gonna take off those manifold bolts like I showed you and then pop the damn cover off, because that's not gonna happen. Oh my gosh. Part of the problem is see that nice tall oxygen. Oil pressure sending unit in the back of the motor. Okay. So you have the brake booster line. Now I unscrewed it from there, and I got a Procharger. So this is my vacuum manifold over there that runs to the brake booster. So I undid it from there. I undid the clamp, pulled the hose off. The hose was so stuck on there. It took me a while to get it off. And then you have a second vacuum line going to the back of the motor. That one right there. I'm sorry, going to the back of the manifold. So you have those two vacuum lines going to the back of the manifold. So basically you're going to have to, well, let me show you. Hold on a sec. Okay, so let me show you what I had to do. Because there's very little room underneath the cowl here. The intake manifold immediately hits. You can't get it out. So you have to start disassembling the intake manifold. Undo these 4 bolts that you're going to have here for the fuel line, for the fuel rail. Pop up the fuel rails, just pull up. They're a little snug, just pull up, don't be afraid. And you're going to get some fuel spilling out, so immediately have some shop rags or a pig mat to place underneath. So you take that off like that, set that aside carefully. Now this is just a cover, and it's got 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm sorry, where the fuel rail goes. That fuel rail is actually holding that outer cover in place. You see that? So when you take off the 4 bolts of the fuel rail, you're going to have to take this cover off. And you're going to have to wiggle it out like this, because it's immediately going to be hitting the cowl. But there's enough room, just pull up on the front end, and then you're going to wiggle it out like that, and it's going to come out. So now you gave yourself a little more room. Let's see, here is the brake booster line and the vacuum line. So the brake booster line, I undid the clamp here, I pulled it out because the oil sensor is right here, it's jammed in between, so you're not going to just pull the manifold forward and out. So I wiggled the intake manifold a little bit like this. I tilted it on an angle, so I pointed the front towards the driver's side, and then I got my hand back there and I undid the one vacuum line. I had to use my pick tool, my L-shaped pick tool, to get in there and pop it off. Didn't want to come off. So then I was able to set the manifold back down, and then with the oil sensor here, with one hand I pulled forward and out, and then with this hand I helped feed it through and around the oil pressure sending unit. And that's how I got it out. So you are not going to just undo the 10 bolt and pop it out. Got to take off the fuel rail, take off that cover, undo the line from the brake booster, tilt the manifold a little bit, get in there and pull the vacuum line off. Then carefully hand feed this around the oil pressure sending unit as you pull it out and forward. Of course, it would help if you had somebody helping you, but I never do. So that is how you take the intake manifold off the LS3 Corvette Grand Sport. So I guess I'll clean this up, and then we'll work on the front cover, front timing chain cover. I put some tape over that just because when I was blowing all the debris off the engine, with the harmonic balancer gone, you have a gap and you will get dirt down into your oil pan. So I just put a little blue tape there. So we're making some progress. So next we'll work on the front of the motor, the timing chain cover. We'll take the valve covers off, and we'll start taking out the cam and the heads. And then we'll start the assembly process. Alright guys, that's it for right now. I'm going to take a break, so if you could please click the like and subscribe button. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll do my best to help you out. And thank you for watching. Have a great day. Those of you who are removing the intake manifold for whatever reason, and if you're going to be using the same cylinder heads, take a template like I did And these bolts came out from these corresponding holes on the intake manifold. This way, you know, if there was ever any issue when the bolt was installed and there was a threading issue, the threads are probably already matched to the threads in the cylinder head. And it's always a good idea to keep the bolts where they originally came out of. So just do something like that. I did that for you guys. Even though I'm using new cylinder heads, so it doesn't really matter. But I did that to show you guys. Because I'm sure the majority of you might be just removing the manifold for a cam swap and using the same head. So keep the bolts where they originally came out of. It's always a good practice. Alright guys, I'll be back.